Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Unsung Heroes episode number 21 of the Super Motocross World Championship here in the 2026 season, episode number 4 of the AMA Pro Motocross Championship, the Country Club of Motocross High Point Raceway hosting round 4 of action, the UFO Plast High Point National Father's Day weekend once again. And there were several privateer racers who put together great performances this weekend. I am Trey Stire, your host. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope you enjoy this episode and we hope you continue to spread the word. Of course, you can find the audio version of this show as a companion to the Stire Sound podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart Radio, and YouTube. Plus, you can find the written articles on my personal website, treystire.wordpress.com. In addition, I would like to say that this is the 3-year anniversary of my Unsung Heroes series coming to life. After High Point in 2023 is when I began this series, and now it has been going strong for 3 years. Hard to believe, but thank you so much for all of the support from those who listen, those who read. Also, huge thank you to all of those who have been a part of this series and an interview subject at some point, from the riders to the mechanics, team managers, team owners, you name it. Everyone that has been a part of this series and has made this series successful, thank you so much for all of your support and your help. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into things and talk about who performed the best at High Point. We are going to go ahead and hop into things this week on the Unsung Heroes, but we have a little bit of a different interview style for you on this edition. Primarily, of course, we talk to several of the privateer racers from around the sport, whether they compete in the 250 class, the 450 class, sometimes even SMX next. But today, we have a bit of a different experience. We're going to hear from someone spinning the wrenches, someone behind the pit board. So for those of you who don't know, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you?
My name's Erik Kuykendall, and I work for Valentin Guillod.
Erik, welcome to the show. Thank you for the time, man. As you mentioned, you are spinning the wrenches for Gizmo Racing Yamaha. You're working for Valentin Guillod, of course, MXGP veteran, turned AMA Pro Motocross star now. 10th overall, a very good finish for him at the High Point National this most recent Saturday, round 4 of the season. And it was Valentin's 6th overall top 10 in 15 starts here in AMA Pro Motocross. He's been doing well after recovering from an injury late in Supercross season. First of all, go ahead and take me through your weekend. I know you're very excited to be back here on the East Coast and on this side of the country. Take me through your weekend at High Point. You had some press day riding for the Gizmo Racing team. All the boys were out there on the track, so a little bit of a chance to go check out the track, get it dialed in before the weekend, and like I said, top 10 overall, really solid performance.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Press day really helped us because Val, because of his injury, hasn't been riding during the week. He's been in California during the West Coast swing. So our suspension was very set up for the West Coast. So press day made some changes heading into qualifying. Qualified 14th, I believe, 14th or 15th. And then Moto 1 struggled a little bit on setup. Came back, made some changes. Moto 2 was a lot better. I think finished 11th. Was in 10th for most of the moto. Then he got us at the end. But overall, good weekend. The 26 bike has definitely been different than the 25 because last year we just rode a stock bike. Dead stock, everything. Had bars, a seat cover, a clutch, and grips. So this year we have a little bit more team support. So we've been doing a little bit more testing on the weekends.
A great weekend for the team overall as well. I mean, Freddie Noren was in the top 15. You guys all across the board. Keegan Rowley got into the motos in the 250 class, as did CJ Bernard. So, pretty solid weekend for the Gizmo Racing crew. But, of course, as I've mentioned, Valentin had a really rough crash at the end of Supercross. He was racing the 250E series, went down pretty hard in qualifying at Cleveland. It was a really rough one. He was able to come back at Fox Raceway for the start of Pro Motocross, but you could tell he was still feeling the effects of it a little bit. You mentioned he's not been riding during the week, but How have you been able to see his progress? Because I talked to Val on Friday and he said, "Man, I'm feeling better." And he told me that he felt really lucky that he got off from that Cleveland crash without any major injuries, or at least it could have been way worse, and he felt that he was lucky to get away from it with as
Very,
relatively minor injuries as he had.
very lucky to get away from that one. Very lucky to walk away. He walked away with cracked T2, T3, and T4, and then some ribs, and then they didn't call it punctured lung, but something with his lung. So he was beat up still, but still able to come back for Fox. And then Fox was the first time we rode a 450 outdoors since late December, and that was on Florida sand tracks. So that was a completely different feel than what we had at the practice track 6 months prior.
Continuing with Val, of course, he comes over from the MXGP series last year. He spent so much time over there, both as a factory rider and as a privateer, put together some solid seasons, finishing in the top 10 in points for a couple years before coming over to the U.S. But from your perspective, how did you get in contact with Valentin? How did you form that relationship with him to become his mechanic once he arrived here in the United States?
Well, he first came over for the first round last year, and I was working for Jackson Driscoll on Rock River. And then when Jackson got hurt, I was kind of just floating around, and the team had me. And they had Marshall Weldon's guy working for him until Redbud, I believe. And then Marshall came back at Redbud. So then I took over for Val then. And then after last year, we just had a great relationship. We did Motocross Nations together. And then this off season, we were just going to go as a package deal wherever we were going to get, We ended up staying with Gizmo, and we both moved down to Florida together. And actually lived at Conrad, the owner of the team's house, in the same room on some air mattresses all winter. So we've become good friends.
Of course, working with Val, he comes over here and racing the MXGP series. He has a good knowledge, and you think about coming over here, it's a very big cultural adjustment for him. And also, the racing format is a lot different than what he's used to. When you race over in the MXGP series, you have a qualifying race Saturday, you have a couple time practice sessions, two motos on Sunday. Over here in the States, you really cram everything into one day, other than if you ride press day on Friday. So for him, I know he had a few races under his belt by the time you started to work with him, but did you feel like at the start of your relationship that he was still trying to figure out things over here in America?
Oh, for sure. The tracks, the food, the travel, all the way down to the hotels he was staying at. Like last year, he was still trying to figure it all out. So this year, he's a lot more established, knows where to eat, knows what hotels to stay at, knows what the tracks are going to be like, knows how to set up his bike up for an American track versus a European track. So yeah, last year it was definitely a struggle, but then we have such a good team around us with Conrad and his girlfriend. They all helped us out, helped him out. He lives with them now, so we've gotten used to American life.
I remember last year at High Point, he was complaining about some kind of noodles he were eating. He was like, "Man, these are dry." He was like, "These are so much better in Italy or wherever else he was describing." But talking more from your perspective now, of course, you've been wrenching the last couple years for the Gizmo Racing crew, but talk a bit about your journey as well, because everybody has a place that they start, whether it's racing or for your end, turning wrenches. Take me and the listeners through your journey to becoming a mechanic. Why did you go down this path, and what led you to breaking into the sport as somebody who's spinning the wrenches, who's working on these bikes, and getting them in tip-top condition so a guy like Valentin can go out there and get strong results every single weekend?
Well, I was just your average weekend racer, working and racing, and then I had a bad broken ankle where I had 18 pins, 19 pins put in me. So I was like, all right, racing's done. Roofing, I was a roofer too, so roofing was kind of done. I was like, all right, I got to figure out a new path. And I'd already built all my bikes. I used to build all two strokes. So I kind of knew what I loved to do, but then didn't know what to do with it. And then when I broke my ankle, I found out about Scott Atkins' school up in West Virginia, Pro SX MX Tech. And I was like, well, I'm going to be down, not walking for 8, 9 months anyway. I might as well go up to school. So I moved up there on a peg leg and crutches and went to Scott's school. And then the rest has been just searching for jobs, changing teams, trying to find a better team, trying to find different job, trying to find a good rider. But very happy with Val and very happy with where I'm at right now.
West Virginia, of course. I'm a native West Virginian, so a place near and dear to my heart. And seeing all of the graduates of Pro, MX, SX Tech making it big in the top ranks is pretty cool to see, whether it's race winners, podiums, top tens. There's a lot of great mechanics who are coming through that program, and you just mentioned
Seems like
some of the
everyone.
teams. Yeah, exactly. It seems like there were multiple posts during the end of Supercross. It's like all three podium guys in this class, Pro MX, SX Tech graduates, and here we are. But take me through some of those teams you just mentioned. You mentioned trying to find that right fit for you, whether it was both the organization or the rider. For those who might not be aware, what was your career path like, and what have the roads been up to the Gizmo Racing team and, of course, Valentin Guillod?
I worked for some privateers, just no team privateers for probably 6 months while I was in school. And then my first job out of school was with Rock River. So I've been with them for second or third year. So I've been with the same-ish team, same people the whole time.
You bring up a great point there as well. Of course, longtime fans of the sport knew the Rock River Power Sports Yamaha team, and they competed for years. Guys like Ben LeMay went through there. Of course, Alex Martin won at Budds Creek for that team. Colt Nichols used that team to go get a Star Yamaha factory ride. Several other big names through there as well. And of course, last year, Mike Duclos, the original owner of the Rock River team, the team ends up going to Conrad, who of course is part of the Gizmo Mods organization, and it ends up becoming the Gizmo Racing team. You've mentioned your close ties to Conrad, and you were under both versions of the team leadership. So for those on the outside looking in, what was that transitional period like when Conrad went from essentially the biggest sponsor and supporter to the team? Now he's the team owner and he's running the show.
It was nice because he's very involved. I love Mike. But Conrad brought me and Val down to Florida. So our main goal was 250 Supercross this year. So we went all in on Supercross. Me and Val were down there for 4 months testing. We would bring a motor back. Raymer and Conrad would tear it down, build us a new one, bring it back out, go test it, put it on the dyno. Like we were all in for Supercross, which was a lot better than any other prior season had been. So that part of testing and development we hadn't had before, which was nice. But what kind of bit us was we put so much into the 250 and we didn't get to test any time on the 450 outdoors because he ended up getting hurt in Cleveland. But the team as a whole, so much better. Just the whole operation moves cleaner, smoother, faster. And I think Conrad's plan is to keep growing, so it's only going to get better.
Of course, I talk to so many of the riders on here, no matter what class they're in, no matter what stage of the career, and I always like to ask them what are their goals in the upcoming races, the upcoming part of the season. Of course, we still got a long way to go. 7 rounds left. We've got this 4 race stretch starting next week at Red Bud. Then, of course, Southwick, the sandy conditions there, Millville, then Washougal. For you as a mechanic, what goals are you able to set for yourself? Because obviously, I'm sure there's something, whether it's some kind of checklist or maybe helping Valentin get better finishes, but as a mechanic, what kind of goals do you set for yourself in order to keep the team running very well and also to keep Val up there in the fight and keep him running for top tens every week?
Well, on a smaller team, you just have to take more responsibility for like parts and then more on setup and everything. So a lot of my focus on the weekends is setting up, making sure the rig's good, making sure all 5 riders have parts and everyone's good. So that's my main checklist. And then for my bike, my main checklist is make sure Val's comfortable. And I've seen him ride to his full potential. So if he's not doing that, even if he doesn't communicate it with me, I can see that he's not happy. So we try to figure that out.
High point, of course, in the book, so we're in this off weekend, this transition period into the next part of the calendar. Redbud, I know there is going to be a tremendous amount of hype around that race this year. Of course, a big time race every year, the crowd always turns out in full force, but this year, July 4th, America's 250th birthday, that crowd is going to be packed. It's going to be loud and rowdy. How much have you been looking forward to this Redbud race? I'm sure there might be some other rounds that you've really looked forward to, but man, Redbud this year seems like it's going to be one for the ages.
Gives me chills thinking about it. My family's from Chicago, so I've went to Redbud my entire life. So it's always been my favorite national, other than Washougal. So 250 years. Val's not American, but he's going to celebrate it like he is, and we're going to have a great weekend.
You mentioned Washougal in there being another one of your favorite tracks. Where did that come from?
Last year that was our best finish. We finished eighth
Oh, I
overall
gotcha.
last year. So I was like, and just being an East Coast Georgia kid, the trees out there and just the West Coast, I'm like, that's the part of the West Coast that I like.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Hey man, great finishes always give good vibes. I know so many people through the years, whether it's winners in Supercross like Chad Reed, every time he rode into San Diego, it seemed like he was the guy to beat. But sometimes these venues, man, you get some good finishes there. But of course, a long way to go. There's been a lot of ups and downs this season, but Valentin Guillod really seems to be getting back in his groove as a racer. For the next stretch of the season, what would you like to see out of him as well? I know he's steadily getting healthier. He's getting slowly back up to 100%. So from Val, what would you like to see over this next stretch of races beginning with Redbud?
Just consistency in the top 15 is hard. It's top 10s are hard this year. The classes, it's stacked. So just consistency. We're sitting, I think, 28th in SMX. And that's our goal to get him in there, make some money this year, since he didn't make a lot of money in Supercross. But mainly consistency and comfort. You can tell when Val's comfortable when he's throwing big whips and having fun. And that's when you know he's going to ride good.
Man, I like to mention that a lot to people who go to the Nationals or people who are at the track maybe for the first time. Like, yeah, I know you want to watch Jet, you want to watch Hunter, Hayden Deegan, Jorge Prado, etc. But man, Valentin Guillot might be the most fun person to watch do a qualifying lap because if he's feeling good, any jump with any remotely sort of pop, any sort of height on it, he is going to be sideways or backwards over it. He's always a lot of fun to watch in his qualifying laps, but Erik, thank you so much once again for joining me. And real quick, I always give the racers a chance to shout out some of their sponsors and supporters. Of course, you're turning the wrenches, so you might not have as many sponsors, as these riders, but feel free to give a shout out to those who have helped you along the way and those who keep supporting you, like the Gizmo Racing Team.
Yeah, huge shout out to Conrad, everyone down at Gizmo, him, Raymer. They're making it all possible. And then huge shout out to O'Neill came along with us this year from me and Val last year. So they're now sponsoring the whole team. So that's pretty awesome.
Thank you for the time, man. Enjoy this week off, and then hope to see you around at some of these nationals the rest of the season. Best of luck to you, to Valentin, and the entire Gizmo Racing crew throughout the rest of 2026.
Thank you. I'll see you at Redbud.
All right, see you, man. Starting with the 250 class and the Toyota Redlands Bar X Yamaha team returned to the top of the order. It was a pretty solid weekend for that bunch, including Dylan Schwartz, who has been one of the top 250 MX privateers frequently throughout his career, and this was his first time at the top of the order this season. Of course, Fox Raceway, he went down Moto 2, injured his shoulder a bit, but he started turning up the heat at High Point. 12-10 for 10th overall, and that was the 14th overall top 10 of Schwartz's career. He had a fantastic battle with Lux Turner all day long, pretty much. They had a duel in Moto 1. Lux got the best of that one, but later in the day, Schwartz ended up staying ahead of both Lux and another teammate, Parker Ross. Those Bar X boys were linked together all day long, especially there in the second moto. They ran nose to tail, three of them in a row. And of course, if you've been following along all season, that's kind of confusing when you're watching because 40, 42, and 43 on the same exact bike wearing the same exact gear, pretty hard to differentiate when you're watching out there. But either way, Dylan Schwartz back in the top 10. Great to see him performing well once again. And right behind him in the overall results, Lux Turner. As I mentioned, he was the best of the Bar X crew in Moto number 1 with that 11th place finish. And he built a little bit of a gap at the end of that race, actually 4 seconds over Schwartz. Moto 2 a couple spots further back from Schwartz, 12th place. But it's been a tough couple of weeks for Lux, of course. the part issues from pileups and crashes in Hangtown. Thunder Valley was all right. He got a few points, but not quite at his usual level. And this was a big step forward, a big step back in the right direction, and closer to his performance from Fox Raceway earlier in the year. 11th place overall. Definitely one of the best nationals from Lux Turner so far in his career. And speaking of Parker Ross, it was an improvement for him as well. Another guy who left the first round at Paula a bit banged up. He left round one with a broken nose, actually. Not a great start to his season. He struggled a bit considering his rookie year was really solid last year, but looking back through the results, he also had some tough rounds. So maybe this run at High Point is going to set him up for the middle stretch of the year. And of course, he got a top 10 last year at Redbud, which is his career best to date so far. But Ross, he was in that transfer or in that point battle near the back around that 18th to 22nd range, but he started losing ground a bit later in the race, got tight, fell back to 24th position. A much better start around the top 10 of Moto 2, and he was pretty solid. He took 14th at the checkered flag, best Moto finish of the year for Ross, and he walked away with 8 points from High Point. It's been a tough year in pro motocross so far, but the opening stretch is done. Look for Parker Ross to step up through the rest of the season. Now moving to some other racers in the field, a former Bar X rider who's now competing for the AEO Power Sports KTM organization, Carson Mumford. It was a tale of two motos for Carson. He was fast all day long, but unfortunately, Moto 1, he really wasn't able to prove how fast he was. It was lap 2 of the race, and he had to pull off the track. His machine was backfiring, making all sorts of terrible noises, and unfortunately, a mechanical issue, a DNF for Carson Mumford in Moto 1. His mechanic was able to swap the engine out, put a new power unit in that KTM SX 250F. He was back on the gate and ripped a fantastic start and stayed inside the top 10 for the entire moto. A 7th place run for Mumford. I believe his second best moto finish ever. He had a 5th in his rookie season in 2020. A 7th place run, his best of the year for sure. He had an 8th at Hangtown, has looked really good throughout this season. He stepped up from Thunder Valley as well. Like Lux Turner, he had points in both motos, but it wasn't quite his level he demonstrated earlier in the year. But he was hanging around guys like Joe Shimoda throughout the moto, beat racers such as Chance Hymas, such as Casey Cochran. Great performance for the number 71. And of course, Carson continues building his points and continues chipping away at trying to secure his first automatic playoff berth. 20th place overall. Shout out to Marshall Welton on the MX6 Racing Kawasaki. He finished 20th in each moto, 4 points at the end of the day, and his journey to that spot was pretty different in each moto. The first moto of the day, he started 29th at the green flag and he just slowly worked his way forward, picked off riders position by position by position, and he joined that battle later in the race and ended up progressing to 20th. And the second moto, he started 17th, but he tipped over early, picked it right back up, although it was very early on, so he lost 10 spots from the fall, dropping to 27th, but he kept climbing once again, gaining 7 of those spots back. It was a modest points day, but man, he put his hard hat on. He went to work. 4 points, very hard fought effort from Marshall Welton at High Point. Another racer in the points this weekend, back in the points actually, we have Gavin Towers on the Phoenix Racing Honda. Of course, home race for Gavin, number 73. He is from Venetia, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. He scored some points last year at the event, and now he has scored points at High Point in his second time there as well. He ran inside the top 20 for a good chunk of the day. He moved up to 19th in the first moto. He was around the points the entire moto and climbed to 19th toward the end of the race. And he was set for another top 20, but unfortunately, he was collected in a crash that also involved Derek Kelly. That was the reason for the Red Cross flag in Moto number 2 of the 250 class. And of course, after the crash, a bike problem, bike issue, that really knocked him out of things. Also, well wishes to Derek, who suffered a broken humerus in the crash. A real bummer. Derek has had a solid season, some ups and downs, but he's also put together some great results and got back to his previous level. Heal up soon, Derek. Hopefully, we will see him back at the track reasonably soon. But for Gavin Towers, a return to the points. He struggled at some of these opening rounds as well, so getting back closer to the front is a great sign. Welcome back to racing. Hunter Yoder on the Club MX Yamaha. Of course, Hunter put together his most consistent and best supercross season to date so far. Yoder, it's been tough for him outdoors. Last year, he battled through the Epstein-Barr virus, so he was really under the weather at a lot of these rounds and didn't showcase his full potential, his full pace. And now, finally, he has a point on the board. He made life pretty difficult on himself in the first moto, went down early, crashed on the opening lap, and was buried deep in the field. He kept fighting, he kept working, but he was only able to reach 25th by the end of the race. However, Moto 2, he improved a bit, 21st place. He kept that final points position, and he held off Nick Romano, a factory rider, to score said point. So shout out to Hunter Yoder. Great to see him back at the races. I encourage you to go check out my press day interview with Hunter Yoder, with Devin Simonson as well, the Club MX team, who we'll mention a bit later in the show, as well as some other guys like Cade Johnson, Levi Kitchen, Luke Fouser on the Trans World Motocross YouTube page if you have not already. Great to be back at the track. Great to be back doing press day interviews. Oddly enough, my first standard press day interview since Arlington in February because of a couple of different formats or other happenings. But the last rider inside the points at High Point in the 250 class was Jeremy Fapani on his number 752 KTM. And Jeremy was solid throughout the day, pretty consistent, only 1 point, but he's a rookie, he's still learning, and he's also an Arizona native, so not as used to some of these East Coast tracks. They're pitting just outside of the AEO Power Sports rig aboard his KTM. Of course, FXR now supporting him, Monster Army as well. Let's see if Jay Fresh can continue to build and score points through the rest of the summer. Now moving into the WMX class, and boy, was it a weekend of change. For the first time since the opener last year at Fox Raceway, Lachlan Turner was not the overall winner. Finally, Charlie Cannon standing on the top step of the podium overall. 5-1 moto scores for the Aussie aboard her quadlock Honda. She's still a bit frustrated and says that she needs to do more and knows she has to build and keep getting better. She's a bit frustrated with some of the aspects of her game, but she was relieved to finally get her first overall victory. She was a bit surprised by the news that she was the overall winner. But man, she worked forward. Bad start on Friday in Moto 1. Progressed to fifth. She was tracking down Michaela Nielsen late in the going, but not enough time to pass her. And then on Saturday, Cannon rips a great start, P2 around the first corner, then takes the early lead from Lotte Van Drunen in moto number 2, and boom, red flag, start undone. She gets another great start, P2 behind Lachlan Turner, but Turner starts to pull away a little bit. However, Lachlan cross-rutted, went down. Charlie Cannon inherits the lead and the moto win, and at the end of the day, the overall win. Congratulations to Charlie and the Quadlock Honda crew. Also, Charlie celebrating a birthday last week, 21 years old. Great way to celebrate a birthday, and man, there were a ton of birthdays around the Pro Motocross paddock. Speaking of Honda riders in WMX that celebrated a birthday, how about Mayla Herrick? She was the talk of the town this weekend. Made her professional WMX debut here in America. The Colorado native turned 17 on Friday, literally just becoming eligible to race. And guess what? She led Moto 1 wire to wire. What a performance from Mayla. She was very poised out front. An absolutely perfect start. Rocketed out to the lead. Van Drunen and Turner caught her a little bit toward the end of the race, but she kept maneuvering through lap traffic very well A very poised, very veteran-like ride from the rookie and the newest pro on the tour. But unfortunately, Saturday she was involved in that big pileup off the start and was the reason for the red flag. But her parents confirmed that nothing was broken. There was some speculation that she may have broken her femur, but thankfully she walked away from the incident with only a concussion, and of course, she is a bit banged up, but no broken bones. Hopefully, she will be ready to roll later this summer for the Loretta Lynn's Championship and also for the remainder of the WMX series, which of course resumes at Unadilla Raceway in August. Several other great performances. Shout out to Lotte Van Drunen getting her first overall podium, second the entire duration of Moto 1, and she was the fastest qualifier on Friday morning. But unfortunately, their Moto 2, they had to do a scramble drill to put the oil plug back on her machine. Her whole shot device was also locked up, so that explains why she lost so much ground on Cannon early in that race before the red flag. But she was able to get back out there, finish P4 in the second moto after a bad start. Great to see Van Drunen here in the United States. Hopefully, she returns sometime in the near future. A lot of strong performances throughout the field. I know Taylor McCutcheon was not happy with her performance after scoring a podium in Thunder Valley, but McCutcheon was another one in the birthday brigade. She also turned 21 and turned 21 on Saturday. There were balloons and all kind of things set up around the PRMX rig. Shout out to Taylor. Happy birthday to her. And then we have a couple other riders we're going to shout out briefly. Some Triumph privateers. First of all, Works Triumph Racing, a new effort for the summer. They have a 250 Pro Nicholas Hunt, and then two racers in the WMX division, including Taylor Harold, who made her debut at Thunder Valley, and she put together a second moto top 10 on Saturday. A ninth place run. Shout out to Harold. She is getting better, looking solid since turning pro. And also to Lillian Pettis, who has been one of the top racers throughout the summer in the privateer ranks. She's a bit of that bridge between the top fast girls who are competing for podiums and wins every single week, but it seems like Pettis is also clear of that 10 to 15 battle. She's a consistent top 10 presence, and she had a fantastic battle with Jamie Astudillo, who is back in America. Of course, the defending Canadian champion. Astudillo is from Pennsylvania, so High Point, her home track. Jamie competing for the Priority MX Gas team this year, and those two were trading spots on Friday. They had an incredible battle going late in the race, and Pettis held on for eighth position. I saw her mom, Jessica, out in the crowd. Typical Moto mom. Man, was she stressed, but she was excited. She was clapping. She was waiting to see if her daughter was going to be able to hold off the position, and she was. And I asked Jessica about it on Saturday, and she was very excited because Lily has never beaten Jamie until Friday. So great performance there. She also said that Lily has been enjoying her Triumph machine and that it turns and handles better than the Husqvarna, but has a little bit less power than the machine. Unfortunately, Lily was one of those riders who was caught in that early pileup. Her bars got twisted up a bit, and unfortunately, she was not able to get out there and compete in Moto 2, but she's still inside the top 10 in points and has consistently been in that top 10 range. Got her career best sixth place finish at Hangtown. So keep an eye on the number 76 throughout the rest of the year. And that is your WMX recap. So many ladies going fast. Congratulations to Charlie Cannon for the overall win, Mayla Herrick for her first moto win here in the U.S. And as I mentioned, the series will resume in the final stretch of the motocross season. They will not be competing alongside any of the events in the next four races, but the final three races, Unadilla, Budds Creek, Ironman, all of those events will have a WMX race at them. So if you go to those tracks, make sure you root on the top women on the planet. Now we are talking about the 450 class of pro motocross and several racers putting together their season best runs, some putting in career bests at High Point. We're starting things off with Valentin Guillod on the Gizmo Racing Yamaha, another racer I got the chance to speak with briefly this weekend. He told me that he has been slowly but steadily recovering from his brutal qualifying crash at the Cleveland Supercross, and he told me he was very lucky to escape He did have some injuries, some fractures, but it was only the end plates. He didn't fracture anything too major and was able to get back in time for the start of the outdoor season. Of course, he struggled a bit at Paula, but things have been turning around the last few races. He was 11th, I believe, in one of the motos at Hangtown, 14-11 for 10th overall. Consistency helping him out on Saturday at High Point. First moto, he fell back a few places after running 16th early and then progressed back up to 14th. And it was quiet, but a very solid 11th later in the day. 6 top 10s overall in 15 starts. That's a pretty good track record so far. And of course, shout out to his mechanic, Erik Kuykendall, for his time on the Unsung Heroes this week, giving you a bit of insight into the life of a 450 pro motocross mechanic. Also putting together strong results, Mitchell Harrison aboard the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX Kawasaki, his best run of the Pro Motocross season so far, 15-12 for 12th overall, a consistent day for Mitchell as well. He gets a bit closer to the cut line. He's 21st. He's on the outside looking in, but Colt Nichols has missed the last two races. Plus, there are some other racers a bit further up like Shane McElrath and Justin Hill, who are currently not competing in the Pro Motocross Championship. There still might be a chance for Mitchell Harrison to maybe sneak out an automatic berth in the SMX playoffs. Of course, he was the final qualifier a year ago. Maybe he can bump his way in this year. Also, one thing helping him out, Justin Barsha, unfortunately not racing on Saturday, did not score any points, while Harrison gained 17. That's a racer behind the cut line and behind Harrison right now that could have leapfrogged him, but now things will be a bit harder. Of course, you still have a guy like Mikkel Harup behind. Who knows what's going to happen in the grand scheme of things, but regardless, a solid day for Mitchell Harrison at High Point. Another solid day and another solid rider. Freddie Norn on the Gizmo Racing Yamaha. He keeps climbing up that all-time starts leaderboard. Now tied for second officially with Mike LaRocco. And he made some moves and made some passes. Some racers were gaining a few spots, but nothing too big. Freddie Norn, he was one of the consistent biggest movers all day long. 20th to 13th in moto number one. In the second moto, he went down early on. He and a couple other riders tipped over, fell to the rear of the field, and Freddie just kept climbing forward. The Swedish veteran marched his way from 38th to 15th, 23 spots gained after his crash. And personally speaking, I think that could put him into consideration for the Hard Charger Award. A great run through the pack for Freddie Noren. And of course, that Gizmo Racing Yamaha team, 3 riders right now healthy and racing aboard their 450s, and 3 different nations represented: Guillod from Switzerland, Freddie Noren from Sweden, Stefan Rubini still awaiting his first point of the season, Rubini from France. A lot of nationalities over there at the Gizmo truck, but those guys performing well right now. Returning to action on Saturday was Jeremy Hand aboard his Valley Motorsports Honda. Of course, no pro motocross rounds in Ohio, so High Point serves as his home race, and it was his best run in a while. He's been scoring points pretty regularly throughout his entire career, especially over the last few years, but he was back in the top 15, 14th overall aboard his number 87 CRF 450R, his first top 15 overall since Unadilla in August of 2023, where he was 12th overall. Very consistent day for Jeremy. Speaking of Hondas, Justin Rodbell, the summer of Rodbell is taking shape on that SLR Honda machine. 17-17. Another guy with a consistent day. Justin Rodbell, better at High Point, scored his first points of the season at Thunder Valley. He's stepping up. Of course, this is SLR's first full season as a team. They ran several rounds the past couple years. Of course, last year with Michaela Nielsen running the Women's Motocross Championship, and this year supporting both Nielsen and Mayla Herrick. Rod Bell, solid day. Let's see if he can keep building through the rest of the summer. Speaking of building, Cornelius Tondell on the ISRT Kawasaki, a great first moto, and he had a great battle with Dylan Ferrandis, of course, the factory Ducati racer, 2021 450 motocross champion, two imports from MXGP. Ferrandis and Tondell were mixing it up. He played great defense, but unfortunately he lost out to Ferrandis. Still a 12th place finish, which was a great run. But in Moto number 2, it was an early crash. The duo found each other again, but it was not under good circumstances. Ferrandis and Tondell both went down in the same incident. Both ended up failing to finish the race. Ferrandis pulled off immediately. Tondell ran a couple more laps before pulling in. He will be racing in Redbud, of course, in a couple weeks. And for Tondell, that is the American track he's raced at the most. He competed at Redbud last season, of course, during his 3-race stint aboard the JWR Honda, his MXGP team last year, when they visited here in the United States. And Tondell was here in 2022 racing the Motocross of Nations aboard a Fantic Factory Team Maddie machine. So Tondell, this will be his third start at Redbud and second time in an AMA Pro Motocross event. Grant Harlan, he entered the weekend a little bit under the weather, still in pretty good spirits, and he also has a broken finger that he has been nursing since the round at Hangtown. Of course, he had that spectacular crash. Somehow only ended up with a broken finger, but he still sustained a bit of an injury there. He bowed out of the first moto early on. Don't know what happened exactly there. Maybe a mechanical issue, but he rebounded later on in the day. 16th place finish to end the afternoon for Grant. He is currently 23rd in the 450 motocross point standings. Jack Chambers, I was mentioning some racers with some career bests, and shout out to Jack, one of the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX racers out there. Of course, he moved up to the 450 class, traditionally a 250 guy. He got injured at the Anaheim 1 Supercross, broke his wrist, missed the rest of the season, then jumped up to the 450 for the summer, and on Saturday, he scored his first career 450 points. So congratulations to Jack. High Point, a very important venue for him because 5 years ago, it was the venue where he began his professional career. So, some very important milestones happening in Mount Morris, Pennsylvania for Jack Chambers. And he scored points in both motos as well, 21-18 aboard his Kawasaki machine. Shout out to the PRMX crew getting a little bit better this weekend. Hamden Hudson also a bit better speed wise this weekend. I believe he ran in the points for a bit of Moto 1, but I believe he had some kind of issue, had to pull into the pits for a bit. He did end up finishing the race, but dropping out of the points. Hopefully, Hamden will be able to score his first 450 points soon. Vinny Lahovey, speaking of Kawasaki riders, of course, a Pennsylvanian local, VLJ437.com, Kawasaki. He made his first 450 Supercross main event earlier in the year at Cleveland, and he went 2019 on Saturday, points in both motos in front of his home crowd. His first outdoor points since 2023. He's had a few Supercross main events in between there. He spent a lot of time battling Devin Simonson, who got the opposite moto scores, 19-20. Had some bad luck this weekend. I talked to Devin on Friday. He said his goal was to finish around the top 15. He's been doing some local races such as Pleasure Valley Raceway up in Pennsylvania. He battled with teammate Jessen Turner, who of course will be competing in the SMX Next ranks later on this summer. But Simonson, another rider who celebrated his birthday this weekend, 25 years old now. Simonson is. He went down at the beginning of the first race, lost his clutch in the process, but he still charged back to 19th place. Then Moto 2, he lost his rear brake early on, so it was a very tough moto. Ended up 20th in that one. Still walked away with points, not quite where he wanted to be, but it was a tough weekend, so salvaging points in each race, not too bad for Devin Simonson. Also had a very close call in the second qualifying session, made a bit of contact with Carter DeLong on that uphill triple before the finish line. He was very upset, threw the hand up after the incident, but thankfully he didn't go down, and he will be back for a few different rounds this summer. So keep an eye out for the number 89 to make a return a little bit later on in the year. And your final point scorer from this weekend at High Point Raceway, Lorenzo Locurcio on the Wildcat Race Team Gas Machine. Lorenzo, another rider who fell out of Moto number 1 with some sort of issue, but he was back in the second race. He was involved in that crash that Freddie Norton was in, but he worked his way back up to 21st, claimed the final point of the day for that Moto finish. And a few notes from racers outside the points. I didn't do news and notes from outside the points this week in the 250 class, but shout out to Braden Aylerman, also from the Wildcat Race Team Gas crew, qualifying for his first career national through the consolation race. Also, Russell Bucherri, 2 consolation race victories in a row. Jaden Searles for the Privateer Support Program, the McGinley Clinic Bunch. Searles qualified for his first National of the year. He was close at a couple other of these races, finally made it on through. Then notes from the 450 class, a few racers making their first national start, including Brett Hydorn, who nearly scored a point in the final moto. 26th overall for the number 529 Honda. He went 25-22 on the day, qualified 35th straight into the motos, and was just 1 spot shy of claiming his first career point in his first career start. Speaking of first career starts, as I mentioned, Connor Mowry qualifying for his first career Pro National. He made his first attempt last year at Budds Creek, so still very new to things. He was only a few spots out. He qualified 40th overall at Budds last year, finished 10th in the LCQ, but he qualified 34th on Saturday, made it into the motos on his Husqvarna machine, and went 34-30 on Saturday afternoon. Robbie Thomas also in there making his first career national. His first pro attempt was last year at Unadilla, also raced Budds Creek. He won the consolation race on his KTM to qualify. And also Mikey Kokorin from Pennsylvania, the number 880 on a KTM. He had the long blonde hair flowing out of the back of the helmet. He qualified for his first career national in his first attempt, so 1 for 1 for the number 880. Congratulations to all of those racers who made their first career starts this weekend. That concludes the Unsung Heroes of High Point. Thank you so much for tuning in. Third-year anniversary of the Unsung Heroes and the 1 year anniversary of my podcast, the Stire Sound Forming. Thank you so much for all of the support over the years. Thank you once again to Erik Kuykendall for his appearance on this week's show, giving insight to his role as Valentin Guillod's mechanic over at the Gizmo Racing Yamaha team. Of course, we will be off next week since the AMA Pro Motocross Championship is off, but we will return after Red Bud. And don't worry for those needing their racing fix, MXGP of Portugal in Agueda and the Canadian Motocross Series Triple Crown round number 3, both happening on Sunday. So you got your racing fix this weekend if you need it. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. I have been Trey Stire. This has been the Unsung Heroes of High Point, and we'll be back after round 5 in Red Bud. Take care, everybody.